Back in June, Kamala Harris said the protesters should not let up. And then we witnessed 3 months of chaos, destruction, people's businesses and lives destroyed, and so far 32 people are dead. And the bad news for Democrats is that support of these riots has backfired, and boy, is it backfiring bad. A new poll out from the Trafalgar Group shows that Trump is leading in Wisconsin, and Trump has actually been closing the gap in nationwide polls and in battleground state polls. The Democrats, of course, are taking notice and now acting like they've always opposed the violence. Governor Kate Brown of Oregon says, "Let me be clear, the violence must stop." But earlier, just about a month ago, she said we must defend these peaceful protesters. The Democrats and the media are desperate to maintain the narrative that everything happening is just peaceful. CNN going as far to say that fiery but mostly peaceful protests are occurring. And we've seen it before. It's been nonstop. The New York Times said peaceful marches give way to burning buildings and looting. The reality is dangerous extremists are marching around our country with impunity. And the Democrats know that if they condemn it, they will lose half their voter base, because right now, prominent members of the squad are still defending the violent extremists. But we got a story here from the New York Times, how chaos in Kenosha is already swaying some voters in Wisconsin. As residents see fires and looting, some worry that local Democratic leaders are failing to keep control of the situation. The New York Times confirming what the Democrats probably figured out only in the past few days. Guess what? People don't like riots. The crazy thing in this story, they say some people are just saying they won't vote. Some people are saying they really don't like Trump, but you know what? The Democrats have no strategy. And if you were to ask me, I believe that if we leave Democrats in charge of these cities or give Joe Biden the White House, the rioting will only get worse. The Democratic Party is split in half. You've got traditional liberals, many of whom aren't paying attention, who believe these really are peaceful protests thanks to a media apparatus that is desperate to maintain Democratic support. And then you have the actual far leftists who will lie, cheat, and steal to get whatever they want. Ayanna Pressley, for instance, lying about what happened in Kenosha. And I can only imagine it's because she needs to maintain the narrative so that traditional liberals keep supporting the extremists. But what happens when it comes to your town? We've already heard the C-SPAN phone calls. One woman in Minneapolis saying that the Democrats at their convention didn't mention any of the riots. And she lives here and she's scared. You know why the DNC didn't mention the riots but said peaceful protester? Because if you realized what was going on, if the traditional liberals actually started seeing what was happening in their cities, they would revolt. And we're seeing it happen now in Wisconsin. And a very, very interesting story from the New York Times. Let's jump right in and go through exactly what's going on. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's many ways you can give. I have a P.O. box if you'd like to send things. But the best thing you can do, share this video. I don't have a marketing department like CNN, like Fox News or MSNBC. I just have you. If you think I do a really good job, please consider sharing this video to help spread the word. And if you want to support me further, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and subscribe. The New York Times says how chaos in Kenosha is already swaying some voters. John Garrity, a 41-year-old worker in a tractor factory, has barely paid attention to the presidential race or the conventions. Every day he focuses on survival, getting his son to sports practice, working at his job where he now wears a mask, and getting home to sleep only to start over again the next day. But when he woke up on Monday morning to images of his hometown, Kenosha, Wisconsin, in flames, he could not stop watching. The unrest in faraway places like Portland, Oregon, and Minneapolis had arrived at his doorstep after a white police officer on Sunday shot a black man in the back multiple times. After feeling 100% on the fence about who he will vote for in November, he is increasingly nervous that Democratic state leaders seem unable to contain the spiraling crisis. Quote, "It's crazy that it's now happening in my home city," he said. "We have to have a serious conversation about what we are going to do about it. It doesn't seem like the powers that be want to do much." That's the Democrats. I feel bad for this man, but I've said over and over again, it will come to your home. If not now, then tomorrow. Not tomorrow, in a week, in a month, in a year. If it's not stopped, these people will eventually be surrounding you, screaming in your face, demanding you salute like they did in D.C. And I've got the images. Oh, and we're going to talk about that too. They demand you salute. They want to defund the police. Then who will stop them? No one. This man didn't think it would come to his neighborhood, but I've said over and over again, it will. It's just a matter of time. And this guy wasn't paying attention. I don't blame him. Regular family guy trying to help his kids. He wasn't watching the news. He was on the fence. Not anymore, because they showed up to his doorstep. The politically calculated warnings of President Trump and the Republican Party about chaos enveloping America should Democrats win in November are reverberating among some people in Kenosha, a small city in the southeast corner of one of the most critical states in this election, where protests have raged for a number of increasingly combustible nights. While many demonstrators have been peaceful, others have set fire to buildings. At least 4 businesses downtown have been looted. Men armed with guns have shown up to confront protesters, leading to the shooting of 3 people, 2 of them fatally. On Wednesday, a white teenager from across the state line in Illinois, which I must add is only about 20 minutes from Kenosha, was arrested in connection to the shooting. And Mr. Trump vowed to send in federal law enforcement and additional National Guard troops. In Kenosha County, where the president won by fewer than 250 votes in 2016, those who already supported Mr. Trump said in interviews that the events of the past few days have simply reinforced their conviction that he is the man for the job. But some voters who were less sure of their choices said the chaos in their city and the inability of elected leaders to stop it were currently nudging them towards the Republicans. I said this a long time ago. Yes, the riots are bad and the Democrats should have called them out. But that's why I showed you early on what Kamala Harris said in June, when she said they should not let up. Well, they didn't. Congratulations, Democrats. This is what you have wrought. And now people are upset and they're waking up. They say some Democrats are nervous about condemning the looting because they said they understood the rage behind it, worried that what was happening in their town might backfire and aid the president's re-election prospects. Well, the New York Times just said that's literally what's happening. You're scared to condemn hordes of violent criminals and extremists attacking innocent people? This is insane to me. These regular people have done nothing to deserve this. The man who was nearly crying in front of his destroyed family business did nothing to anyone to deserve the destruction of his family's legacy. And the Democrats could have come out and defended him, but they chose not to. They say the situation in Kenosha remains extremely fluid. Many people in the city are enraged about the police shooting of a black man, Jacob Blake. The Democratic nominee for president, Joseph R. Biden Jr., spoke with his family and said that injustice must and will be done. And Wednesday night, in response to the shooting, athletes from the NBA, WNBA, Major League Baseball, and Major League Soccer refused to play games. And following the arrest of the teenager in connection with the 2 shootings, it emerged that he displayed support for Mr. Trump on social media. Well, we do have a bit of a breaking update. The NBA is coming right back, I guess. They didn't last long. Sure, whatever. They say Ellen Ferwerda, who owns an antique furniture store downtown just blocks from the worst of the destruction that is now closed, said that she was desperate for Mr. Trump to lose in November, but that she had huge concern the unrest in her town could help him win. She added that local Democratic leaders seemed hesitant to condemn the mayhem. I think they just don't know what to say. People are afraid to take a stance either way. But I do think it's strange they're all being so quiet. Our mayor has disappeared. It's like, where is he? They support this. Like I said, the Democratic Party is split in half, and they know that half the people like the riots and the extremism. So why would they condemn it? They're going to leave you, small business owner, to fend for yourself. On Tuesday afternoon, Miss Ferwerda was writing Black Lives Matter on her storefront red paint. On Wednesday, after the fatal shooting the night before, she said she was most worried about the people from out of town who are driving around with powerful guns claiming to keep the peace. She said she understood the looting and burning. I think the rage is justified. Anyone who was paying attention should know it was going to explode at some point. I wonder if she would agree when they come and destroy her building. No, she wrote Black Lives Matter on her window. That'll keep her safe. Mr. Garrity, a former Marine, said he was disturbed to see his town looking like a war zone, and he feared the Democrats in charge were letting people down big time. Politics for him had long been a sport he did not follow. In his late 20s, he voted for Barack Obama, the first vote in his life. He did not vote in 2016, and he called the president's handling of the coronavirus laughable. You know, this guy sounds a lot like me. I mean, I follow the news, but yeah, I voted for Obama the first time, didn't vote the second time, didn't vote in 2016, but all that's changing, particularly because of the riots. I went out and bought guns. Most of you know that by now. Mr. Garrity said he disliked how Mr. Trump talked, but said the Democratic Party's vision for governing seemed limited to attacking him and calling him a racist, a charge being leveled so constantly that it was having the effect of alienating instead of persuading people. And the idea that Democrats alone were morally pure on race annoyed him. This is a very important thing. This is a very important statement for Trump supporters to understand. When I would say things like, I don't like the way Trump talks, or I think he needs to chill on tweeting, I'm being honest. I think Trump has improved. He's really calmed down. He's much more presidential today, and he's done a lot better. So I'm totally fine with voting for the guy now. But you can see other people, regular people in Wisconsin, they're saying they didn't like his attitude. Now, I don't think it matters all that much because the Democrats have no real strategy. Quote, the Democratic agenda to me right now is America is systematically racist and evil, and the only people who can fix it are Democrats. That's the vibe I get. It's funny because conservatives have been saying that's the Democrat strategy, and now you can see swing voters are saying it's exactly what it is. Mr. Garrity said he understood peaceful protesting but felt frustrated with Democratic leaders who seem afraid of confronting crowds when things turn violent. He was angry at the statement by Governor Tony Evers on Sunday, which in his view took sides against the police in a knee-jerk way that worsened the situation. On Tuesday, Mr. Evers, a Democrat, did condemn the looting and fires while reiterating protesters' right to assemble. I'm not 100% sure of anything yet, Mr. Garrity said, of November, but as of now, I'm really not happy about how Democrats are handling any of this. Mr. Biden on Wednesday denounced systemic racism and police brutality and also sharply condemned the destruction and violence unfolding in Kenosha. And good for him. No, seriously, I mean it. Anybody who's going to come out and say no to this, I respect. But I want to show you something. I have here from August 25th. This is the presidential ballot test for the Trafalgar Group, with Donald Trump leading in Wisconsin by just under 1 percentage point, 46.2 to 45.4. What's truly fascinating about this, it's not that Donald Trump is winning. He's within the margin of error. I mean, it is interesting that Trump is winning, but I'll tell you what's really fascinating. The gender breakdown. Gender participation was 52.2% female. So maybe many of the women said no to Trump and every single man said yes to Trump. And so that's skewed in Trump's favor. Like I said, it's only around 46.2% in favor of Donald Trump. But I think the reality is many of these women are going to be voting for Trump. You see, Donald Trump recently said the suburban housewife would vote for him because they want law and order. I believe he's correct. I don't know if every suburban housewife or every person in the suburbs will, but at least we can see here from at least one poll. That may be the case. With more females participating in this poll, Trump is leading Joe Biden. And again, we don't know how that really breaks down. Maybe every woman said Biden, but every guy, I don't know. Well, that wouldn't necessarily make sense, but most of the guys probably, said Trump. We also have Joe Jorgensen undecided in another party in the single digits. But we can see how the Democrats are playing this. First, Ayanna Pressley said, a 17-year-old white supremacist domestic terrorist drove across state lines armed with an AR-15. He shot and killed 2 people who had assembled to affirm the value, dignity, and worth of black lives. Fix your damn headlines. That's a lie. It's a desperate lie because they know they are losing. They do. And they're panicking about it. Donald Trump has railed law and order, but you heard it from these people interviewed by the New York Times. Now, sure, it's a couple people, it's anecdotal, but the poll also shows this swing in favor of Donald Trump. I'm telling you, man, I said a couple of years ago I'd never vote for the guy, but the riots have gotten so out of hand, and the Democrats have defended them over and over again. I've had enough. Like I mentioned, here's a tweet from Steve Guest. Steve Guest says, as violent rioting continues across Democrat-controlled cities, Kamala Harris' comments from June are striking. Protesters should not let up. Does Harris believe the rioting and rampant vandalism in Kenosha should let up? Now, Steve works for the GOP. I think his official title says GOP Rapid Response Director. So, of course, he's framing things, in his GOP way. But is he wrong? I don't think Kamala Harris is going to come out and cheer for vandalism directly. But in June, we saw mass looting across this country. And she sided with those who were supporting, protecting, or engaging in that destruction. Why? Well, the media has been covering for them, saying peaceful protester over and over again. That allowed them to defend the movement and use it, even though regular people were suffering and their towns were being burned. Senator Mike Gianaris, he's a Democrat. He's a Queens born and bred. I believe he's a New York state senator. Deputy Majority Leader says, when Trump glorifies one, we inevitably get the other. If you don't see how uplifting McCloskey's emboldens people like Kyle Rittenhouse, then you're not paying attention. Sure, it does. But this is a Democrat who's making a very important point for all of you right now. And for all of you in Wisconsin, we see an image of the McCloskeys armed. We see Kyle Rittenhouse armed. And he's saying those who would try to defend their property or defend the innocent are the bad guys. That's what they've all been saying. Julian Castro, quote, an individual was involved in the use of firearms to resolve a conflict is a strange way of explaining that someone murdered two protesters. Julian Castro says that the violent extremists who are burning down Kenosha, where these people live, we just heard from, they're just protesters. Ayanna Pressley said they were just there to affirm the dignity of black lives. Then why did they bash a 70-year-old man over the back of the head? Why were they chasing this kid down? And according to the New York Times, why did they shoot first? Well, the Democrats are lying. And this is what scares me the most. They will call you the bad guy if you defend yourself. I saw this cartoon from Bill Bramall. It is the United States on fire. And there's a portly little Donald Trump saying, and there you have it, Biden's America, with a gas can next to him. I found this particularly funny because these people who make these comics and work in the Beltway, many of these politicos doing the polls, they're not actually talking to people in Wisconsin. Yes, Biden's America. That's correct. You see, the people who are running these towns where all the rioting is happening are Democrats. And Donald Trump is warning you, if you elect Biden, there will be no one at the federal level to stop this. When Governor Evers finally relented in Wisconsin, Donald Trump was able to send in federal law enforcement and bolster the National Guard. That's not Trump's fault. That's Trump's solution. It was the fault of the governor rejecting federal aid, of Mayor Lori Lightfoot in Chicago, not even that far away from Kenosha. It's all Chicagoland area for the most part. She also rejected federal assistance, saying, I don't need leadership lessons from Trump. If you don't believe me that it's going to come to your neighborhood, I don't know what to tell you, because I've been covering this nonstop since it started. Virginia Senate passes bill allowing assaulting an officer to be a misdemeanor. Bill removes mandatory jail sentence. Some might say this is appropriate criminal justice reform. I'd argue it's the erosion of law and order, because we saw this in Portland as well. The district attorney said that even if someone assaults an officer, he will scrutinize the arrest and perhaps release them. And so the rioting has not stopped, and they're proud of it. So when we see it erupt in Kenosha, you need to pay attention to what those people said to the New York Times when they said that they weren't really paying attention and were sitting on the fence, and it was some faraway story they didn't care about until it came to their doorstep. And now they're saying, what are you doing? Where are our leaders? With the one woman who hates Trump saying, where'd our mayor go? Really? It's really remarkable. But I'll tell you where it gets crazier. Black Lives Matter activist Shaun King threatens to name innocent cops as Jacob Blake's shooter. In fact, Shaun King has advocated for more violence. And that's why the Democrats won't stand up to them. And it's why everything seems to be getting worse, because the Democrats are unwilling to actually defy the far left whose support they're hoping for to win in November. That's a scary thought. They would be beholden to these extremists in a desperate attempt to stop Donald Trump. Here's a tweet from Ford Fisher, a journalist. He says, tonight Trump is making his nomination speech from the lawn of the White House itself. It shouldn't be any surprise that a noise demo will be going on outside. Could they be loud enough that that press at the White House hears them? It's happened before. I'll be live streaming. Go concert and noise demo today outside the White House when Trump is giving his address. I think this is good for Donald Trump. You know why? Donald Trump has repeatedly been telling everybody that the riots are out of hand and must be controlled. But people in Wisconsin, this man I just told you about, was on the fence, not paying attention. It was only when the riots came to his hometown did he truly understand how bad this was for everyone else. Imagine this. Donald Trump giving his speech where he says, over the past several months, dangerous Antifa extremists have wreaked havoc on our cities, destroyed people's businesses, and killed. And while he's saying it, you hear screaming and chaos and rioting behind him. That'll really alert people to what he's talking about. Now, I suppose you could argue that it might make Trump look weak, and that's the goal, that people at home will be like, well, if they're protesting in front of your house, then why could you stop it anywhere? But it may just be the case to swing local elections. Donald Trump will say, even right now, violent, dangerous individuals are outside the White House screaming as loud as they can, threatening violence and destruction. And maybe regular people will hear that and be scared. Maybe this is a really bad idea for them. Well, Donald Trump is expected to skewer Biden, they say. Trump's at a skewer Biden convention address saying, We have spent the last 4 years reversing the damage Joe Biden inflicted over the last 47 years. And Nancy Pelosi is actually saying there should not be any debates between Joe Biden and Trump. The reason why I highlight this, Joe Biden's was in government for, yes, 47 years, I suppose is the number. And he was the vice president for 8 years. When all of the violence in Black Lives Matter erupted and was spreading across the country, Joe Biden was the vice president. With all of the problems we faced then, why should anyone believe that voting for Joe Biden is a solution today? You can argue Donald Trump isn't that good, but then I would counter with, right, but Joe Biden would be substantially worse, wouldn't he? I believe that Donald Trump at the federal level will offer up assistance and enforce the law. And if the governors and mayors accept it, we will end these riots. So long as we have these Democrats who don't want to give Trump the victory, it will all get worse. But they noticed their polling was doing bad, and regular people, local people in these areas, in these swing states, were getting angrier and angrier. And the more Trump said, I am here and I am ready, regular people said, why won't our governor just say yes to the help? Why won't they end this? I don't know. I guess because they're scared to lose the support of the extremists who, well, they need to beat Trump, I guess. In my opinion, however, if they just came out and said the rioting is bad, then they would have fared way better against Trump. Now I think Donald Trump is on track for a landslide victory. While the polls aren't all in his favor, he's trailing Biden by single digits. Right now, the polling between Trump and Biden is closer than it was between Hillary and Donald Trump. They say that, but the polls between Donald Trump and Joe Biden it's a narrower lead for Biden than Hillary's was. Hillary had about double the advantage. Now, a lot can change going into November. We also have the problem of Democrats trying to disrupt the election. Of course, the Democrats will tell you Trump is the one doing it. It's actually what Nancy Pelosi said. It's just not true. Donald Trump is calling for the election to be exactly as it always is. The Democrats are calling for universal mail-in voting, which is not the same as absentee. That's what Donald Trump did. Absentee is a chain of custody. You request the ballot. Mail-in voting, universal mail-in voting, they send ballots to everybody. The Democrats are ignoring the advice of Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, who said we can vote in person safely. Why? If the doctors they know and respect and cheer for are saying it's safe, why advocate for mail-in voting? It's just disrupting the election. I think they're playing dirty games. I think they won't condemn the riots, and their media allies are covering it all up, saying peaceful, 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 in an attempt to manipulate people into voting for them. Like that cartoon shows, The Country on Fire, they blame Trump. That's untrue. When Donald Trump deployed the PACT officers into Portland, they called him all of the worst names in the book. They said he was a fascist dictator. And now that it turns out people really liked it, I guess. Opposition to Black Lives Matter is skyrocketing. According to Civics, now at 38%, while support drops to 49%. The riots are turning the American people to the Republicans, just like the New York Times said. The Democrats played a dangerous game. It was a bold gamble. I can only imagine at this point they truly regret it as it backfires in their face. They're going to start losing these swing states because it may be too little too late. Don Lemon pointed out in his show, as most of you know, it's showing up in the polls. And now they're panicking. Now they're worried. And I think this is one of the reasons why Pelosi doesn't want Joe Biden to debate Donald Trump. First of all, Joe Biden's not all there. He doesn't have the energy. Donald Trump is old, but he's spry. But also think about the law and order calls. Trump would pressure Biden to denounce the far left, and Joe Biden cannot do it. Joe Biden gave a statement where he said, I support, Black Lives Matter and ending systemic racism, but violence isn't the answer. Donald Trump said, we're going to lock these people up. We're going to send in law enforcement, and we will put a stop to this once and for all. Strong. National Guard will be deployed, and Trump has said it over and over again. If Joe Biden says anything like that, he will lose every single Bernie Sanders voter because they like the destruction and the riots. It's part of their game. It's part of their goal. It's their plan. So Joe Biden can only sit there cowering in his basement, hiding. Nancy Pelosi says he shouldn't debate. Well, Biden came out apparently saying he will. His camp did, at least. But Joe Biden was hiding in the basement for these past several months. Donald Trump has actually gone out and confronted these crowds. Oh, they smear him for it, saying he targeted peaceful protesters for a photo op. I tell you what, I'll take the president who can shut down a protest like that, defending property they tried to burn down the church over the guy hiding in his basement any day when we are facing an existential threat from extremists who hold fringe white supremacist views. That's the left. They do. The white fragility stuff, intersectionality. I will take the guy who says, I will not send in law enforcement without approval from the local leaders, but I will if they're ready. That says to me Donald Trump is not a fascist, not an authoritarian, but he's ready and willing to defend our communities from this violent threat posed by extremists. The Democrats are not willing to do that. And so I'm absolutely going to be voting for Trump and the Republicans this time around. And I'm a left-leaning independent. But the Democrats have earned this. They played with fire and now they've gotten burned. It's backfired and I'm sure they'll regret it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out and I will see you all then.